Okay. I'm very happy to be here. Do you hear me? Yes. I'm very happy to be here. Do you hear me? I'm very I really am happy. My subject this evening, is attunement and right attitude. It's a very important topic. You know, Master talked about techniques, he talked about all sorts of actions, principles, but among us disciples, the thing he emphasized more than anything else was attunement. Attunement is very, very important for the reason that you don't really do anything. I have written a book, it's really by me, but I don't want everybody to know it, and so I'm telling you. It's called Cooperating with Grace. That is what yoga is about. The reason I don't want you to know it is that the author is a Christian. I wanted to get into the mainline Christian world without that flag, Swami Kriyannada. But it tells the importance of understanding. Jesus said, "As many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God." And this is a central teaching of his. Most people think receiving him means that, sure, I accept him. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that, yes, I accept that it's Wednesday, not Thursday. It doesn't mean that. It means attuning yourself to his consciousness. And Master, again and again, I remember one time he was saying, a few of you will fall, but it needn't be if you would stay in tune. Attunement, he said in Autobiography of a Yogi, a very key sentence there. Thoughts are universally, not individually rooted. We don't create our own thoughts. We're really only transmitting stations for thoughts that are around us. They're universal, and it depends on the level of consciousness. I remember I'd been with Master just a few months, and I fell into a sudden mood. And you know, when you have a mood, all your reason supports your mood. And I just got sick of it finally, because the more I tried to reason my way out of my mood, the more I saw all the reason in the world to think this world is no damn good and nobody loves you, and you know, you go on and on. And I said, well, do we like this? I said to my subconscious mind, and the answer was no. I said, well, boys, what are we going to do about it? And the answer was, sit down and meditate. So I sat down and meditated. I put my mind here. 5 minutes was all it took. When I came out of that meditation, everything was rosy, the world was rosy, there was no reason to think differently. What I had done was change my level of awareness. Yogananda said, I suffer when I see you have moods, because I know that Satan has gotten a hold of you. Moods take your mind down. So to have the right attitude in this world, it's not enough. I was trying to affirm right attitude, but it wouldn't come. The most important thing is to change your level of consciousness. And if you understand that whatever level you're on, that is where your thoughts will be. Change your level of consciousness to a higher level, and things will be rosier. But it's very important in a spiritual community, on the spiritual path, very important to understand that your attitude is all important. You must have a positive attitude, you must have a cheerful attitude. It says in the Gita to remain even-minded and cheerful. Very important. I had a dream not very long ago in which foes of mine decided to burn me at the stake. And they had piled up faggots and they'd lit the fire, and they were all seated at a table, as can happen in dreams, and they were feasting and laughing and joking, And here I was burning at the stake. And I just didn't care. And then some friends of mine came and released me, and I didn't care. I was completely indifferent. If you want to save me, fine. If you don't, fine. This kind of attitude is necessary. Your circumstances are not your reality. It's how you react to those circumstances that makes them your reality. So always have a cheerful outlook and try to look for a cheerful outlook. I remember Yogananda was pretty much of a stickler for neatness. Came into our monk's kitchen one day, and it was an absolute mess. It was really embarrassing. We had, at least we'd done the dishes, but seats were dirty, and he sort of cleaned off one seat and sat down, and he looked around and said, well, it might be worse. And I thought, that was the right positive attitude. We live in a world where actually the battle of Kurukshetra in the Bhagavad Gita is a battle every one of us has to fight. And we have to fight it every day. Always. There are influences that try to pull us down, and there are other influences that try to lift us up. Mix with good people. Mix with positive people. Shun negative people like a disease, because they can influence your consciousness to get out of tune. The more in tune you are, the more you will feel. I know there was one monk, Leo Cox, used to take photographs of Master, and he plastered his room all over with photographs of Master. Master said to him, why do you keep taking photographs of this lump of flesh and bones? He said, get to know me in meditation, then you'll know who I really am. And I found that that is so. The more I feel his presence in myself, the more I am able to do things right, and the more I'm able to understand. Quite recently, I had a serious desire to understand a certain basic point on the spiritual path. And I asked him, and the answer came to me. It came from inside. It's not as if he was standing up there telling me. I just suddenly understood. This kind of attunement is very important. So any time that you are doing anything, ask God, is this what you want? Ask Master, is this what you want? Is this right for me? Always seek that guidance from within and from above. A very important thing on the path is to think to God, not about God. Say you, not he or she. Say, whatever I'm doing, is it all right for me to go out today? Is it better for me to stay home? You can follow that to a point of superstition, but using common sense, you will find that the more you do that, the more you'll begin to feel that God is just behind the desk you're working on, just behind the clock you're looking at, just behind everything. He's in your breath. He's in everything. And so the most important thing is to offer your thoughts up to God. You can't change yourself. He can change you. This is why a guru is so important. And the guru's presence is not the whole thing. The guru's words are not the whole thing. The most important thing is to be in tune with him and to feel his power. To them gave he power to become the sons of God. So we want to develop that power by drawing it from above. The grace is above there and Satan is down below. And you got God and Satan fighting it out between them, and you're in the middle ground. And if you move this way, well, it's my left, it's your left is this way. This way it's Satan, this way it's God. If you turn toward God, you'll find him influencing you. If you turn toward Satan, his influence will be there. And it's a very real influence. This is why living in community is so important. Having people around you who are seeking God and who are seeking how to improve themselves, so important. When one person gets down, the other people can lift him up. It's very, very helpful. So I'd like to ask you if you have any questions, because I'd be happy to try to answer them. Or did I shock you with that question? Yes.
Swami,
Can you stand up?
I just wanted the name of the book again, because I would like to
No, Jyoti, come here. Help me out. I'm deaf as a post, I'm sorry. What did she say?
She would like the name of the book. Which book? Cooperating with Grace.
That's the name of it, and it hasn't come out yet. Yeah. And it's by a Christian. But it's a very good book. It's only 77 pages, so don't feel frightened. And it has many points. Any other questions?
I'm curious if I'm new, so I'm curious if Babaji's ever been seen in the West.
He's new, and he's curious to know if Babaji has ever been seen in the West.
You know, Merida Yucatan, the center leader there, told me that he that he read the autobiography of a yogi, and when he came to that part where it said, only if you think of him with sincerity, call to him, he will hear you. So he said, this I have to know. So he sat down in meditation and asked Babaji, and suddenly the whole room became filled with light. I have had many experiences. Physically appearance, I don't know, but I've seen and known many cases. There was one, it's mentioned in my book, Biography of Yogananda, in which Jaycott's son, Chuck Jaycott was a plumber, and his son was working on the pump at Lake Shine. And the pump didn't work. And he thought, well, let me ask Babaji to help me. And he suddenly saw Babaji, and Babaji talked to him, answered a few of his questions, and when he came out of that, the pump was working. It needed priming, but it still worked. So there have been cases. I have had several. One case, this was in Madras, in Chennai. It was during the reverse monsoon, as they have there, and I wanted very much, before I came back to Calcutta, to have some period of seclusion. I didn't know where to go. I was staying in a hotel, so just before going down to breakfast, in my meditation, I asked Babaji to help me to get someplace in seclusion. And then I went down and sat at my table, and the man at the table next to mine said, you know, I think I have a place where I would like for you to go for seclusion to my house. I'm not going to be there for 2 weeks. And so he said, up at Kodaikanal. But this sort of thing, I've heard many stories like that. Any other questions?
Swamiji, I've been around for a while, but I'd like to know the significance of having a spiritual name.
There's no significance, really, except that it's a reminder to you of certain spiritual truths. I'd say that really, whether I'm Kriyannada or Joe Smith, it's not too much matter. The important thing, though, is that when I have Kriyannada, it reminds me of what I'm doing, and that's a help.
So if an individual picks out a spiritual name, is there a name?
What I suggest to people, since I'm still in the body, that they send me several names and I'll choose, and I can always tell this is the right one. Recently I said to somebody, none of these is right, come up with others. Any other questions?
Yes. Thank you for coming to the neighborhood, and thank you for your writings and your ongoing writings that you've been posting online. Thank you very much.
He's thanking you for coming and for your writings.
Thank you. You know, I'm getting a little old. 86 is not exactly youthful. And yet, in the last 2 years, I've written 5 books, 4 screenplays, given all kinds of lectures in different parts of the world, and done well over 100 YouTube talks. So I still sort of, it keeps me off the streets, let's say.
A question, please. Recently you've posted online about your relationship with your master and how you knew him, and you talk about vows and the importance of vows and vows to a guru versus vows to an organization and such. And I was wondering how that would contrast with what might be still posted at the Crystal Hermitage Chapel there in
Could you tell them what
he's asking, he said recently you posted something about vows to a guru instead of vows to an organization, and how that would contrast with what's at the Crystal Hermitage, and he hasn't gotten to that yet.
It might be posted still at the chapel there right inside the door on the right in regards to vows to an organization and such.
I don't know what's posted there. So.
Well, I don't remember, I only read it once.
It's the life member Sevika vow?
It's the Sevika vow versus the renunciation.
I see. He's asking about the Sevika vow, I guess.
All I know is what I read there one time and what I read online, and they're both very beautiful, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to be critical or tricky or anything, it just seems like there was a contrast there between devotion to an organization versus devotion to a guru, and I didn't really get it.
Well, I say an organization is second to the guru. I mean, organizations are, the unfailing rule of every organization is survival. If they aren't surviving, if they don't exist, they can't serve anymore. So the first thing that organizations have to think of is, will it help us? That's not a good principle. Therefore, I'm sort of anti-institutional. Here I've started an institution. I've tried to make it as uninstitutional as possible. Because people, we have this rule at Ananda, people are more important than things. And I think that's true. Another rule is yata dharma tata jaya. Where there is dharma, there is victory. And I have risked everything in order to uphold dharma. I think that is absolutely essential. So certainly, I remember Peggy Dietz, she was a nun at Mount Washington, and Master told her to go into the world and help people there. And one time he told her to give Kriya, and she said, well, what will the organization say? He said, are you following me or are you following the organization? In other words, he said, follow me. So always follow the principle, don't follow the example of that principle, which I think Ananda has gotten off to a good start. I think it'll last a long time. Nonetheless, everything goes haywire sooner or later. I think the greatest problem of Ananda, the greatest challenge Ananda is going to face in the future is when we become too self-sufficient, when we're too successful. I would say that to keep us always successful, we should give and give and give. As long as you're giving, you're doing the right thing. But as soon as you're thinking in terms of what's in it for me, you're wrong. So sooner or later that selfishness is bound to come in, because it does. But I've done my best to stave it off as long as possible.
I would like to add something also, because Swamiji, when he wrote the vows for the Nayaswami order, specifically made it non-organizational. So you don't need to be a part of Ananda nor follow this line. We have Catholic monks and nuns who are part of that order. We have Buddhists. We have followers of other paths. So the vows are to God, not to an organization.
Yeah. Thank you. Very true. Any other questions? Yes.
Hey, Swamiji, I wanted to know if you have any special plans for any new books or plays?
Well, I tell you right now, my main thing is what I'm launching in Los Angeles is Master's biography. And we have Giacomo Campiotti, who is a very well-known director, movie director in Italy. and he's directed English movies too. So he's going to direct Master's biography, and I've written the script for that, and he'll be talking just briefly to present that movie at the Ford Amphitheater when I'm down there on Sunday. But that's one movie that I have to be a part of and be involved in. Then there's another movie we've gotten that should be out within a year, and that's Cities of Light, about Ananda. And that's going to be a very good movie. I wrote the script for that, and they're going to be filming that toward the end of next month. And that's one I'm involved in. Then there's a John Irwin, I think that's his name, a famous director in England, and he's doing my life, such as it is. And so I have my hands a little bit full here, but I've just finished writing 5 books, and right now I'm sort of sitting by the poolside panting. We'll see. You know, there's one book I'd love to work on, Master's Patanjali. He gave classes on Patanjali, and I'd love to edit that. He told me your work in this life is editing, writing, and lecturing. And I said, haven't you written all the books that are needed? He said, don't say that. Much more is needed. And then editing, I couldn't imagine, but I've had to edit quite a few of his books. And it's really been a great blessing for me. So I have an aptitude for words, and I can make words flow well. So it helps with his thoughts to make them flow well, that's all. It's his ideas. Any other thoughts?
I have one. I feel kind of selfish asking more than one.
Are you free yet? Are you free yet?
Well, that's a hard one to say. I can't think of anything that I need, but it's not for me to say that I'm free.
Do you feel any ego at all?
You know, I had a very interesting experience. This was while Master was still alive. I had to worry about a certain amount of intellectual pride. And I remember I was sitting one evening and I finally thought, I'm just sick of this quality. And I said in my meditation, I was finally ready to come to grips with it, and I said, get out! And I said it with all the force of my will. And suddenly I felt free. And I met Master afterwards. He was looking out over the city of Los Angeles, and I knelt and touched his feet and then got his blessing, and he tapped me on the forehead and he said, very good. But I've never really cared much about that. So am I free? I'm just not ready to say that. I think that's a very personal subject anyway, and I don't think it's anybody's damn business. But let's say if I have to leave this moment, I'll be happy to leave this moment.
It's naturally nosy.
What?
Says he's naturally nosy.
Yeah. Any other questions? What? Yes.
Master, you said earlier, Master said thoughts are universally rooted and not individually rooted.
What's this?
You said earlier that Master said thoughts are universally, not
Yes.
individually rooted.
Do you think it's...
You're a transmitting station for thoughts.
I'm sorry?
You're a transmitting station for thoughts. That's why in a time, for instance, I went through the World War II. I was in Europe before it was starting, and we just happened to be here on vacation when it started. And I noticed how people who were pretty decent people suddenly became Nazis. If you're open to these waves of energy that flow through a country, little national mania and so on, you can catch it. So what do you want to ask?
My question is, do you think also emotions are universally rooted
Yes.
and we tune into them? And also, do you think diseases are universally rooted and we tune into them?
Do you think diseases are universally rooted and we tune into them?
You know, Master said everything is universally rooted. We don't realize to what extent we're not separate beings. Our egos are purely a delusion. We're a part of everything. But he said that whole galaxies they manifest different gunas. Our galaxy manifests mostly Rajaguna. Other galaxies manifest more Sattva guna. Others manifest more Tamaguna. And he said the many diseases that come to this planet are from souls that have fallen and are in the tamasic universe, and they come as diseases to this world to be punished. But these are weird things. I mean, what? Here they come from a distant galaxy and they come here. How do they get here? Time doesn't exist. In reality, the most distant galaxy is no farther away than my own hand, closer than my own hand, because it's all just mental. So he said you can rise, but you can also, once you reach the human level, up to the human level, you're sort of pushed upward. But once you reach the human level, you have the ego, and you can make mistakes, and you can go up or down. And so it is that you can reincarnate a lot of times. In the Rubaiyat of Omakayam, he says that many souls that are, this is Master's interpretation, that are born into this universe at the beginning of a day of Brahma, are still roaming in delusion at the end of it. And the Gita says, at the beginning of a day of Brahma, I throw all these souls out again. And how many days of Brahma have we lived? Your capacity for error in the ego are just incredible. And you can rise, but you can also fall. And if you fall too far, you may end up as an animal and then come back. It's only one lifetime that you go down as an animal. But if you keep on going, you can go down, you can be flung down to the level of a germ. And it may take a long time. And since the ego knows that it's more than just that little germ or that little worm or whatever it is, some of the animals we see around us and everything, they've been people before. Not often, but it does happen. So this is a scary universe we're living in too. And I would say the safest thing is to get with it now. Yeah. Yes.
You just mentioned the different past lives. So, which was your favorite past life experience? Human or animal or anything? What was your favorite past life?
What is your favorite past life?
You know, I asked Master one time, have I been your disciple for thousands of years? I asked him this because Norman had a vision of him with Master back on Lemuria, 80,000 years ago. And I thought I was scared. And I said, Master, have I been your disciple for thousands of years? He said, it's been a long time, that's all I'll say. I said, does it always take so long? He said, yes. He said, desires for this and that take them away again and again. So I hope in this life I'm pretty safe, but you can never presume. The main thing is, whether it's scared or whatever, still go to God. Yeah.
Swami, can you give a yogic definition of the word sin?
Master said sin is only error. You are not a sinner even if you sin, but you make mistakes. And those mistakes can keep you roaming for a long time. But they're only mistakes. You are the ever-perfect soul in yourself. And you must overcome this thought of limitation and know that you are just God's dream in this world. The most important thing on the spiritual path is to get rid of the sense of I, the ego. To feel that you're separate from another person, feel that whatever happens, happens to you. If it happens to your body, it's happening to you. It's very important to try to get rid of that sense of ego, to say that he is the one, not me. I remember after a lecture in Hollywood Church many years ago, somebody complimented me on my talk, and I said, well, God is the doer. She's, really? As if I knew it was good, I didn't know it was that good. Well, that isn't what I meant. But if you feel that whatever you've done, and that includes your mistakes, give your mistakes to God too. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nishkam karma, action without desire for the fruits of action. And even your mistakes, say, God is the doer, God did it through me. Master said God likes that. He likes, if you make him responsible even for your getting drunk on Saturday night or whatever it was, then he will be able to help you. But if you say, well, no, I'm sorry, I hope you didn't see that one. He sees it all. He knows you from top to bottom and inside out. And so open yourself to him. I remember when I went to Kent School, it was run by Episcopalian monks, and all the other monks went to confession. And I never did. I just didn't see any point in opening myself to somebody whose wisdom I did not trust. But when I met my guru, then I was very happy to have him read everything. I remember I was doing the yoga postures for a Jewish bar mitzvah in Beverly Hills, and later, I'm not Jewish, but they wanted me to do these postures, so I did. And then afterwards, a Jewish psychiatrist in Beverly Hills, they're always atheists, and he was trying to grill me on my beliefs. And I tried to tell him a few miracles I had seen, and I could see he was saying, well, Wednesday at 11 I have an appointment for this patient. And in other words, I didn't convince him. And I was with Master a few days later, and Master said, by the way, when you're with materialists and atheistic people, don't talk about miracles. I said, you knew? He said, I know every thought you think. And he showed it many times. And I didn't mind that at all. I was happy for him to know my thoughts, that way he could correct them. But that was because I trusted his wisdom. When I met him, I said, I wanted to be your disciple, want to be your disciple. And he gave me his unconditional love. And he asked me to give him mine, and I did. Then he said, I want to give you to give me your unconditional obedience. Well, I have to be truthful. So although I was desperate to be accepted, I said, well, what if I think you're wrong sometimes? He said, I will never ask anything of you that God himself does not tell me to ask you. So I said, in that case, I give you my unconditional obedience. And I found that it paid off again and again. When he told me to do something that was against what I felt, I would do it, it would be the right thing. So that's different. When you come to a man of God, or a woman of God, let me not limit it, then it's an altogether different thing. But confessing just to anybody, you can make a mistake. They may hold that confession over your head later. Many years later, they'll say, what, you know, and help to try to hold you down that way. So, yeah, any others? Yes.
What's your favorite memory of Master?
My favorite moment with Master, see, I do hear something, I remember he was working on editing his commentaries on the Gita, and I was sitting on the floor at his feet and thinking what a wonderful good fortune it was to be his disciple. And after about half an hour he finished and he wanted me to help him get to his feet, and then he looked at me just just very close. And he said, just a bulge of the ocean. And he never accepted that we were his disciples. They were only God's disciples through him. And he never intruded his ego. So that was one of my most precious memories. Another one was when he was sitting downstairs in the basement telling the monks about potholes that needed to be filled, and I wasn't involved in that particular job, and so I just closed my eyes, and in his presence I felt this overwhelming bliss. And another time I remember out at 29 Palms, I was leaving his dictation room, and I'm quite short-sighted, and I used to be quite short-sighted. Now you can't move without my being able to see you. And so I paused at the door and looked back just to say goodnight, and he looked at me, and such waves of love came over me that really it was not his expression, it was a power that flowed from him. So these are very precious memories, but they all blend together in one vast precious memory. Just being his disciple was a great blessing. So any other, you wanted one? Yes?
Do you have any memories that you could share of Durga Ma or Rajasi?
Do you have any memories that you can share of Durga Ma or Rajasi?
I have quite a few of Rajasi. Durga, they keep the women and the men quite separate. So I didn't get to see Durga. I had a lot of faith in her. Master said, Master told me that when Durga came to him, he said, "You have come." She was a very close disciple. Daya didn't like her, and so she's sort of pushed outside. It's terrible to see politics and religious organizations, but they exist. Anyway, Durga was a very feisty kind of person, and my contacts with her were not gratifying, but I had great respect for her. Rajasi, it was wonderful. He was not a man of many words. There's a book that John Parsons, our lawyer, has written about their SRF's attempt to destroy us through lawsuits. It shows how they failed too. But the interesting thing is that he mentions Rajasi's lectures. Rajasi did not lecture. He gave a few, very, very few words. Usually in his presence he would just remain silent. He would ask us to come and take his blessings. I remember one time we all came up in turn to be blessed by him, and then he said to me very softly so the others couldn't hear, "Master has a great work to do through you, Walter, and he will give you the strength to do it." And I have needed that strength. But he would come up to us and just touch us and help us to feel bliss. But his presence was very inspiring, always not through words, but through silence. Any other questions? Yes.
You talked about higher ages on the planet.
What?
You talked about higher ages on the
Yes.
Like before the pyramids and all that. How do we understand that as far as juxtaposed with cavemen coming onto the scene and that supposedly being the beginning of humankind?
How do we understand higher ages, the yugas, juxtaposed to the scientific thought of cavemen coming on the scene and kind of a straight
That's a pretty ridiculous thought, really. They have their fixed dogmas, but they keep coming again and again. Things that absolutely explode all those dogmas. Show people there have been high civilizations in the past. They don't want to talk about those. But they keep coming up. Finally, they're going to have to face it. But scientists are just as dogmatic as priests. They have their set of dogmas. Max Planck, the famous German scientist, said that a new scientific discovery gains acceptance not because it's reasonable, but because the old guard die off and the young ones grow up used to hearing about it. But for example, there are many, many anomalies. How do you account for a sandaled footprint in rock that is 5 million years old? Human footprint. How do you account for dinosaur trails and human footprints over them? How do you, I mean, that doesn't fit that paradigm at all. How do you account for great civilizations being discovered under the ocean that don't fit the... read these things, there are more and more facts coming out. Besides which, there are many things in the museums they don't know what to do with, so they relegate it downstairs to be looked at someday. But there are many facts that completely explode this thought. One of the most obvious is the Sphinx and the pyramid. You know, the pyramid, and Egypt itself for that matter. Science will of course tell you that Atlantis didn't exist, but it's very interesting. In Mexico there are many villages, Mexatlan, Tepozatlan, Atlan. That's a sentence, that's a sound structure that doesn't fit any old language that we know, but it does fit Atlantis. What about the Atlantic Ocean? There's no old language that we know that has that sound in it, but where did that sound come from? Atlantic. But apart from that, they say that Egypt was a colony of Atlantis, and what scientists have found is that that civilization began at its peak, and all we see is a gradually descending civilization. But who accounts for the pyramid? You could not build that pyramid the way modern scientists say that it was built, with slave labor. It was too noble a structure. They weren't dreaming of slaves in those days. It was a different dream. There are many, many. I'm not going to go into that because it happens to be a favorite of mine. But really, there's an awful lot of information if you want to look for it. The scientists will knock aside everything and just look at what they see. There was one scientist in England, Evans I think his name is, but I'm not sure. He was examining the island of Crete, and he saw something that was on the wrong level archaeologically, and he just looked around and quietly put it on another level. Somebody saw him. But even scientists are willing to bend the facts as necessary. They're human beings. So, any other? Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for people starting out on the path?
Do you have any suggestions for people just starting out on the path?
Well, I would say meditate as much as you can, because your answers will come from higher, not from below. And another suggestion that I have is mix with positive people. Mix with people who have good attitudes. Mix with people who love God. Your company, Master said, is more important than willpower. And so keep the right company and spend as much time as you can meditating. It will get you a long way. If you're not ready to, I'm ready to bargain. I mean, you tend spend 5 minutes brushing your teeth, let's say. So spend 5 minutes brushing your soul up but the more you do, the more you'll enjoy. Okay? Any other questions?
So this is as a follow-up from the question and answer session we had of Swamiji, and in that he mentioned about every negative emotion is born out of ego, and so is like everything that is negative energy is born out of ego, and is joy also born out of ego?
No, emotional joy is born of ego, but there's a joy that comes when you remove pain and sorrow and pain and pleasure, all the oppositions, and then you find underneath all of that there's this joy that carries on through everything. That joy is not That joy does not have opposites. But that kind of joy that people express in TV ads, where you see them jumping up and down with excitement, that will inevitably have its opposite. Ego is really a very subtle thing, but we have to work very hard to get rid of it. I find it's very helpful if somebody, for example, insults you. Thank him. Don't have to fight back. Thank him. You're not perfect. He may not have it right. What does it matter? Don't let anything be there in your mind that makes you try to defend this ego of yours. If it seems like ego defense, get rid of it. You'll find that in that way. I remember there's this one man who had been at Nanda for 12 years, and he just was spending his whole time bickering about Ananda, complaining and criticizing, and so we had a new manager there who called him in. He said, "You haven't been paying your dues for 12 years. You've been nothing but our critic." The man said, "Well, I think it helps the community have a gadfly." And he said, "Well, I can see that that may be true, but what is it doing for you?" And he said, "You haven't paid your dues. I'm going to give you an ultimatum. Either you start paying your dues as a member, or you leave." So he decided to leave, and he came over to my house, and he spent over an hour telling me what a terrible person I am. He said, "Your books are ridiculous, your music is terrible," and he went on and on and on, and I didn't say anything. At the end of it, I said, "Thank you very much," and he left, and I went and I wrote that song, "Though Green Summer Fade and Winter Draw Near," and that's a beautiful song, but that was my revenge. I didn't have to revenge myself. I just let God do it for me. I asked him, and it was there. So really, what people think of you, it doesn't matter at all. And they may think you're the most wonderful person in the world, but they could be wrong. So the best thing is to say, it doesn't matter, it's all God. Give God the credit for everything that you do. I have found, I've written over 400 pieces of music, 141 books, over 15,000 color slides, art slides, founded 9 communities. That's a certain amount of activity, you might say. I don't feel I've done it at all. I don't preen myself, look what I've done. I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd had that attitude. I simply said, "God, you do it." And I found that his inspiration was there. When I had a song to write, I would say, "I want a song that says this, this, and this. Give me a melody." It would be there. And again, he has showed that he's doing it. I'm not doing it. Somebody else could have been here and doing it. But there were other people busier perhaps with more important things. This I don't know. But honestly, the less you take credit for what you are doing, the less you think, I, the happier you are. Ego is the source of all your suffering. When there's no ego, there's no suffering. Like when I was being burned at the stake, it didn't matter to me. I figured, well, it'll be painful for a while, then I'll be over, it doesn't matter. If we can have that attitude toward life, then we find that no matter what suffering we go through, it's all gone, doesn't matter. And your suffering will be much less when you do that. So any other thoughts? Yes.
Yes, you were talking, 2 questions. You were talking of higher and lower age. Where are we right now?
We're in the beginning of the 4 ages are, actually, there are about 200 old civilizations that all have that same tradition. And they all felt that we were on the lowest age then. And now Sri Yukteswar explained that we have finally started to come up, and that was the age of the Iron Age, as it was called in Greece. And the The Greeks had, the Egyptians had gods, demigods, heroes, and ordinary men. And the Greeks had gold, silver, iron, copper, iron. And the Persians had something like that. 200 civilizations had that tradition. And it's hard for us now, but we have to understand that we're a part of a cosmic environment, and that environment affects mankind. So in the darker age, man, for example, you would be standing on a shore and you'd see a ship approaching. Everybody saw the same thing. They didn't see a little dot on the horizon that gradually became bigger and bigger. They'd see a mast, and then the sails, and finally the whole hull, and suddenly the whole ship would be there. There was evidence that their senses could have told them that this is a round earth, but they didn't want to think that way. They couldn't think that way. So people's thinking was cloudy in those days. Then in 500 AD was when that period began to rise. And I know, up until 1900, in the 17 to 19 was a bridge, and then it became the age of energy. And this is an age of energy. We're right at the beginning of this age of energy. And during this age of energy, people will go to other planets. Who knows how far away they will go. But in this age, you demolish the illusion or the delusion of space. Then, as we go beyond this age, you're going to get into the third age, which people will not bother to talk because they'll understand each other's thinking. And in that age, they demolish the delusion of time. And there are books in India that were written 5,000 years ago in the descending Treta Yuga, or the third age, that will tell you your life today, and amazingly accurate. I've had several readings of that, and everything it said was true. And it said you will have two brothers, but no sister is possible, although one will die in your mother's womb. And I asked my mother when I came back to America, and she said she did have one miscarriage, but all sorts of things it told. And that was because in those days they knew the future. Then in the highest age, they see that everything is made of God. And I asked Master one time, well, do the people in this age, will they come back in the highest age? He said, oh no, it's not that easy. He said there are many other planets to go to. This universe is populated all over with people. And a very good argument against Darwin is the fact that people look pretty much the same whatever planet they come from. And people have seen people on coming off UFOs that look pretty much like us. There's a little difference, but they have the same basic structure. So evolution is not just accidental, but all these things, our science is completely topsy-turvy. Darwin is really sort of cornerstone of modern science, but it's all based on illusion. And so then in the highest age, people will be coming who will be spiritual, and they will think more of God. They won't have skyscrapers. They'll live in huts. They won't need skyscrapers. Calm human consciousness will produce a calm consciousness and weather on this planet. And people will be living very simply and very close to nature, but thinking of God. So we have 4 ages. Then after a 12,000-year rise, there will be a gradual descent into another darker age. And so it goes on and on. Very interesting subject. I would say that Purushottama's Joseph
Selby.
Joseph Selby and David Steinmetz have written a very good book on the yugas, and Adanda has published it. I do recommend that you buy that. It's quite convincing. Any other questions? Yes.
Right now, there are many children being born with autism. Are these people from a higher age?
There are many children being born with autism. Are these people from a higher age?
I don't think so, but I don't know much about it. I've heard that many of their autism is not as bad as it seems, but I really don't know much about it. I do think these indigo children are a sign that we're on the upward curve now, and we're going to see much more brotherhood in this world. I think Master's teachings will be the way of life in the future. But that future has to go through a certain amount of wringing first. Depression, war, etc. Let's not go into that. Okay, any others? Yes, at the back. Oh, all right. That's all right.
I'd like to know how we can powerfully, or how we can live our life in a way that powerfully and positively affects this world. How do we do that?
How can we live our life in such a way that we powerfully affect this world?
You know, the strength of your mind has a very strong power. This is why I've started communities. One reason, because people all together, they generate a peace, an aura that really affects the world. I think that we are doing everything we can, but positive thoughts are very important. And in fact, your negative thoughts are very important too. When you are negative, you affect other people. And it's very important not to, when you feel negative, don't be around other people. Don't try to infect them with what disease is coming over you. But it's very important to have positive thoughts, and positive thinking is essential. I can't say more because we're talking about something that isn't specific, but your thoughts influence your environment. Any back there? Yeah?
Yeah.
You?
In the book by Catherine Van Houten, she says that you and Diamata and Master were all in a previous incarnation were in Spain or thereabouts. Now that was a lower age, and I think of you as, obviously all three of you are high souls. Why would you be there in that dark age? The only thing I can think of is...
No, I haven't heard a word of this.
Okay. Why would you and Master and Diamata incarnate, for instance, in Spain in a lower age? He's asking, why would you want to be there in a lower age?
You know, Master came to help people, and I came to help him. And that's all I can say. He came as William the Conqueror. I grew up in England and the English system, and I'd always thought of William the Conqueror as one of the great villains of history. And so the thought that that Master was my own guru was William the Conqueror was a pretty shattering thought for me. And I did a lot of research, and I found that William was really a very saintly man. In fact, a very interesting thing is that they exhumed his body 430 years after his death, and it was still incorrupt, which happens only to saints. So he was his favorite friends were saints, and he was very firm. In the Gita it says that whenever virtue declines and vice is in the ascendant, I incarnate myself as an avatar to punish evil, not evildoers, but evil, and to set virtue on its throne again. And this was William's role. The role of a saint is not the same, but the role of an avatar is always to make some vital change in the world. And William's, what he did in England, its effects are still today. I think Master told us that he was William because he wanted us to understand the world importance of his mission. It was not what Daya says, a sort of a monastery. He came to change society. And I've tried my best in my books to show all the different ways in which his teachings can be applied to change society. So he came for that purpose. He came also as Fernando III, but this he didn't say, he just said he was born in Spain. And I had friends research it, and it sounds like Fernando would be the best fit. He was a saint, and his body is still incorrupt. And I went to visit it. It's open one day a year, May 30th. And I meditated there. I felt very powerful vibrations. And I think his mission at that time was to drive out the Moors. And they were coming into Christianity, and his vision was to save Christianity. And his son, Henry, I feel I was Henry, and that I was Alfonso. It's interesting, Alfonso was also, they've named the Alphonsus crater on the moon after him. And he was an astronomer. And my first interest in this life was to be an astronomer. But they're very interesting. Somebody asked me just a few moments ago, what has been my favorite life? I say this life. But certainly I've been many different people. I remember I went to one of these Brigu readings in India, which is 5,000 years old. And it said that in the time of Kurukshetra, I was the ruler of a small kingdom. I don't know why I've been a ruler so many times, but anyway, I was the ruler of this small kingdom, and I didn't want to get involved in the battle of Kurukshetra. So I left my kingdom to my son and took initiation, and went into the forest and took initiation from a guru and meditated and so on. It's all about that life, and I'm not going to go into the details or into the mistakes I made then, but they're important. So anyway, that's all very interesting.
Swami, are you getting tired?
No.
Okay.
But it is getting late, yes? Yes.
Swamiji, how do you glean the intended lesson behind difficult karmic times?
How do you glean the intended lesson behind difficult karmic times?
Always, first of all, be grateful for it. You've been given your karma, and God is not punishing you with karma. He's giving you a lesson. So try to understand what that lesson is. I'll tell you more. In that life where I was in the time of Kurukshetra, it said that I reached a high state and achieved Shanti in his vrittis, which I would say means Sabikapa Samadhi. But then I disagreed with my guru on something, and I got into doubting. And because of doubts, I fell. And doubts have been a great problem for me in many lifetimes. That has been my particular karmic burden. But in this life, it has been a very helpful thing. So you see that when you have a weakness and you use that, if you have a broken bone, the bone that forms around that broken bone becomes stronger. And so likewise, with your karmic tests, once you've overcome them, you become stronger in that department. So people can ask me just about any question, and I always have an answer for them. And I just somehow can help the people to solve their doubts because I've solved all of my own. So these are things to be thought about. When you have a karma, don't say, I'm being punished. Just say, what have I got to learn in this? Each one, it'll never come without a lesson. And that lesson, once you've learned it, you're free from it. So that's very nice. God doesn't want to punish you. He wants to free you. Any other questions? Yes.
My question is, it's very easy, to me it feels at least, that it's easy to distinguish the right action from the wrong action.
What's this?
For him, it's easy to distinguish the right action from the wrong action.
However, there are times when you have two actions in front of you which are both right, but you do not know which one to choose. In context of, you mentioned your life in Kurukshetra. So,
in Kurukshetra.
Yeah. So the two paths in front is to go fight for justice. The other is to forgive out of compassion. What path do you take?
What is he saying?
He's saying there's a difficulty when there are two right options. One is to fight for justice, the other is to forgive out of compassion. How do you know which to take?
Shall we all go home? You threw in words like forgiveness and so on. You just have to feel your guidance from within. It has to come from your soul. When I started Ananda, there were many reasons why I should not start Ananda. First of all, it was extremely difficult. Secondly, I had more than my share of opposition. And people would say, these are all signs that God doesn't want you to do it. Well, I felt that He did want me to do it, and so I had to fight it. But there are times when you don't feel, and then you have to let go. That comes from higher guidance. That comes from God. Always we should forgive anyway, but we have to do what is right. And there are times when I will be very fierce for what I believe. I will never give in just because people think that I ought to. Very important. I think it's time we finished. Thank you very much.